This exercise 2315 from your textbook, talks about how pharmaceutical companies can make methamphetamine using phenylacetone and methylamine, basically a reductive amination. Now, the reason why companies make this legally, although it's a controlled substance, is that it's used sometimes to treat ADHD. So in low doses, it will increase concentration and focus. In high doses, it induces psychosis, and no matter what doses you have, you open a person up to the potential of a really grueling addiction and terrible withdrawal. And also, no matter what doses that you take it in, it leads to permanent destruction of gray matter in your brain. So ultimately, it harms a person permanently for the rest of their life in terms of who they are as a person, because it destroys their neurons, the neurons whose connections create your experience of the world. So they're asking how to make this from phenylacetone. Now, acetone is a molecule that you usually think of as maybe like a nail polish remover. It's pretty simple. They even have it a lot in chemistry laboratories to clean glassware, although it's not very good to breathe in. Acetone is the smallest possible ketone that you could have. The phenyl here at the beginning is just saying that as a branch off of one of these carbons, you have a benzene ring. And so you'll have this benzene ring there coming off of the acetone. So that's phenylacetone. And you have a ketone here. So you can make an amine, if you add you can make an amine out of this molecule if you add a separate amine in the presence of an acid catalyst and a weak reducing agent like sodium cyanoborohydride, PH3CN. Now, the amine they say that you're adding here is methylamine. So that's a nitrogen, you have a methyl group bonded to it, and otherwise two hydrogens. This, by the way, is the synthesis that they used in the show Breaking Bad to make methamphetamine. You might remember in that show they had some trouble getting barrels of methylamine. They needed the methylamine in order to do this reductive amination. So, just like we saw in the previous exercises, what ends up happening is, in the first step, when you combine the ketone with an acid catalyst and the amine, you first make, so let's just maybe draw that out. If we have the methylamine and an acid catalyst, that would make the imine. So that would give us our ketone. And you'd have nitrogen with the methyl group there. So that's your imine. And then you'll notice you have two bonds here to an electronegative element. You can reduce that by using a weak reducing agent, and we've discussed why you would want to use sodium cyanoborohydride in a previous video on the concepts behind reductive amination. But the result of doing that is to reduce the number of bonds to that electronegative element. So you'd have just one bond there, and you'd have a hydrogen on that nitrogen. And that's the structure of methamphetamine. If you look it up and you compare, it has a really similar structure to a molecule like dopamine. So you can compare, and so it tricks your body into thinking that it's receiving signals from other neurotransmitters. So it's called a sympathomimetic. It mimics the normal neurotransmitters in your nervous system. So it's an interesting application of reductive amination, and it also gives you an opportunity to consider the situation that you may be in as a pharmacist. So these are the types of medications that you'll be giving people, and it's almost all medications have pros and cons, and you have to weigh, each person has to weigh whether they're willing to accept the cons in order to receive the pros, and they have to make that informed decision for themselves based on what is troubling them most in their life and what they think would help them most. But in any event, you can make this I think, reasonably, you can make this methamphetamine molecule using a reductive amination. And pharmaceutical companies do this each year, And as you saw in that television show, Breaking Bad, plenty of criminals do this same reaction too.